The values we trample on can sometimes become obstacles to our success. Hi, my name is Brian. I live in France, more precisely in Paris in the 11th arrondissement. I went from living like a prince to living like a servant. Before continuing my story, I invite you to subscribe and above all do not forget to activate the notification bell so as not to miss the next stories. I come from an ultra-rich family, which was among the richest families in the country. My father was a great businessman. He had several companies and buildings. My mother, on the other hand, was a housewife. She always said she didn't need a job. She was in charge of a foundation that she had set up herself. She helped women with breast cancer. I think its goal was more of having visibility in the city and even the country than it was to help people. We lived in a large, very luxurious villa, and I was the only child of my parents, perhaps that influenced the person I am today. During my childhood, I always had what I wanted. Well, even when my parents didn't agree. To prevent me from making a scene in public, for example, they gave in to all my whims. I always had the most expensive toys. I went wherever I wanted. I did whatever I wanted. I was used to never being told no. At the age of 17, I was the king of our school. Everyone was at my feet, including the teachers. I never did my homework. I paid my classmates to do it for me. I cheated during all exams. The girls dreamed of going out with me, so I used them and broke their hearts. Moreover, I had never dated any lady for more than a month. I dumped them at the slightest opportunity. I broke their hearts without remorse. I was good looking, and I knew it very well. My physique and my money were the key to my success. I became lazier by the day, proud and disrespectful. I considered myself the king of the world. I was not interested in my studies because I knew that my path was already traced. I knew I would inherit my father's wealth since I am the only heir. And when the need arises, I will work in one of these multiple companies as CEO just to receive a salary that I will not have justified. At least that's what I thought. A few years later, I lost my mother in a car accident. I admit that the first 2 months were not easy at all. My mother's absence had created a great emptiness in me. Even though when she was still alive, I didn't pay any attention to her. I didn't seem to need her. Indeed, what mattered to me were outings, trips, dates with girls. I hadn't learned to love the people around me. I didn't know what love and respect for the other is. I gradually felt that something was missing in my life. But I was trying to fill this in my multiple outings, thus overlapping between alcohol and drugs. One morning, I was talking with my father about my project, that of going around the world, and I wanted him to release the funds for it. Dad, I would like to make an extraordinary trip. I'm listening to you. I would like to go around the world by boat. Could you give me enough money for that? Brian, you only think about traveling and spending all my money. What do you want to do with your life? Dad, please don't start again with your sermons. We were in the middle of a dispute when the police entered the house and arrested him for money laundering and corruption. In addition, my dad owed a lot of money to the government. All of his property was seized, his money, including the house in which we lived. It was a nightmare for me. I tried to pinch myself several times to see if I wasn't dreaming. Unfortunately, it was indeed real. I was indeed there, in flesh and blood. My father had just lost everything he had, therefore me too. Since that day, everything myth changed in my life. Living became a real nightmare. Everyone I knew pushed me away. Most of them made fun of me. No one wanted to help me. My ego and my whole being were shattered. I wanted to work to earn money, but I had no diploma. I hadn't even finished my studies. In short, I didn't know how to do anything. Nevertheless, I found myself a job as a waiter in a fast food restaurant in the city, but I didn't get by. My boss yelled at me all the time because I couldn't do my job properly, and he ended up firing me. Desperate, I decided to implement a plan. I remembered one of our neighbors, Mrs. Deschamps, who had just lost her husband. She was very old. She was my grandmother's age, I think. I had planned to seduce her in order to marry her, and when she dies, I will inherit all her possessions. So I rushed to call her. Initially, she was very surprised by my call, since I had never paid the slightest attention to her. I went to her house from time to time on the pretext of giving her my support in relation to her husband's death. We were getting closer because I made her believe that I missed my father so much and that she was the only person I could count on. I did everything to seduce her, so that she fell in love with me. And a few months later, she finally fell in love with me. She even allowed me to move into her house since I no longer had a house. Thus, after 6 months, I gave her my marriage proposal and she agreed to marry me. I pushed a sigh of relief because I achieved my goals. All I had to do was pray that she would die quickly. Fortunately for me, 2 months after our marriage, she fell seriously ill. She was admitted in a hospital for the aged, but I had never been there to see her until she died. I was enjoying my victory. I was finally going to be among her heirs. Mrs. Deschamps had a lot of money, but she left nothing for me. I didn't know that Mrs. Deschamps was aware of all my sneers and had just pretended to be in love with me to better manage her loneliness. She knew I was there for her money. In her will, she left part of her money, including her house, to her son and the rest to a charity. What? It's not possible. It can't be true. I exclaimed after reading the will. I was not entitled to anything, nothing at all. I almost ripped my hair out. I was angry. All this sacrifice for nothing. His son just asked me to vacate his house. Maybe you think she wasn't aware of your schemes? She knew you resented her money, he said. No, it's not true. I loved him. Go tell those who don't know you. You have no love for a human being, except for money. Please forgive me. Let me live here for a while, until I get some time to build a life for myself. I don't want to hear anything. Get out of my house. I immediately left Madame Deschamps' sumptuous house empty-handed. I became homeless again, homeless. I walked for hours and hours thinking about what had become of my life. I once owned everything, but today I have nothing. I had lost so many values such as work, respect for others, love, and many others. I was left with no choice than to start all over again at zero. The next day, I went to see my former employer to beg him to take me back. He was one of my parents' employees. He worked as a cook at home. He was able to save up some money to open a fast food restaurant. He had pity on me, and I went back to work, and so did my studies. Yes, I decided to be a better person and work to have my own money. I worked during the day and went to school in the evening. I lived in a small room at the back of the fast food restaurant. My employer made me rent it. I worked with determination to achieve my goals. At school, I went unnoticed because I preferred to concentrate to graduate at the end of the cycle. I admit that it was not easy at all. One evening, I decided to visit my father. He had been incarcerated for 2 years, at least what I thought. I was surprised to know that my father had never been incarcerated and that all this was just a masquerade. My father had gone to the United States to manage certain things. I was petrified. Why did he lie to me? Why? I suffered all these years because of him, while he was having good times in the United States. I later found the reason through his employee who came to meet me and gave me all the reasons that pushed my father to do this. He said that my father had noticed my deplorable behavior and wanted to give me a good lesson. He wanted me to learn what it's like to live without money when you refuse to work. He wanted me to recognize the importance of studies and respect for others. At that point, I understood that he was right, and I thanked him for this beautiful life lesson. When he returned home, my father invited me to work with him because I had finally finished my studies. But I categorically refused because I now wanted to fly on my own. I now knew what was important in life. I was finally recruited into a small structure in the city, and so I started my career as an accountant.